The Book of Boba Fett was a weird series. That's the best way I can put it. Overall, I enjoyed it, but there were some big story decisions that confused me, so today I'm going to review Season 1 as a whole, and I'll try to talk myself through some of that confusion. I want to start by talking about the aspect of the series that worked best for me, and that is Boba Fett's journey of reinvention. I love that Jon Favreau, likely with the help of Dave Filoni, wrote a story that encompassed all aspects of the character of Boba Fett. It would have been very easy to just ignore everything Attack of the Clones or the Clone Wars series said about the character. A lot of fans were unhappy about how both of those stories treated Boba, unmasking him, revealing that he was a clone, and ultimately just a hurt and lonely boy who lost his father. And I get that. The allure of Boba Fett in the original trilogy was based in the mystery of the unknown, so it wouldn't have surprised me if the Book of Boba Fett returned to that side of the character, but I'm thrilled that they went in the complete opposite direction with one of the very first shots of the series being a flashback to Kamino and Jango Fett's death. It was a deliberate announcement that we were going to explore everything about Boba Fett and what makes him tick. Two standout scenes for me were in chapters 2 and 3. Chapter 2 had the Vision Quest where Boba wandered into the desert and saw images of his past and symbols of his family that started to suffocate him. Seeing him metaphorically break free of those family ties and instead choose a new family in the Tuskens by crafting a gaffy stick was great storytelling. I think that was my favorite episode of the series. Chapter 2 had a perfect blend of action and fan service and humor and powerful messaging. Chapter 3 was farther down in the ranking for me, but it still had one of my favorite scenes of the season between Boba, the Rancor, and its keeper. Seeing this creature Star Wars fans mostly know as just a terrifying killer bred to be a fighter and nothing more, and then realizing that description fits both the Rancor and Boba was superb writing. Neither of those scenes would have meant as much if the series as a whole hadn't embraced all of Boba Fett's story from Attack of the Clones to the present. Boba symbolically taking control of his nature by riding the Rancor into battle in the season finale was awesome, and then confronting his past as a killer by defeating Cad Bane was also great. Over and over again in the season, we were shown that the life of bounty hunting leads to a lonely death in the dirt. It was true for Jango Fett, it was almost true for Boba Fett, Fennec was saved from that fate. It took a near-death experience, but Boba chose a destiny for himself instead of the one his father bestowed upon him. He changed and he grew, and then Cad Bane showed up to say, no, you can't do that. You're just like me, you'll always be like me, and you'll never be anything different. But Boba proves him wrong and defeats him with his gaffy stick, a symbol of his growth, and Cad Bane dies alone in the desert. I know he might not be dead, he could come back, but for now I think that's what the show is trying to communicate. I'll probably do a separate video about Boba Fett's journey in this series, going over the major beats of his arc from start to finish, so I'll be talking about those moments again in greater detail because the whole story really does fascinate me. I know some fans wanted Boba Fett to be flying around, leaving bodies everywhere he went, and those moments where he did break out into violence excited me, but this was a story about the struggle to break out of that way of life, not about wallowing in it, and it worked for me. I do think the execution could have been better in some places, but I'll get to that later. Because the next big thing I think this series got right was its fan service. This show gave us Black Chrysanthemum, Tashi Station, Fixer and Cammy, a BD droid, an N1 starfighter, and so much more. I'm not going to keep listing things because I could go on forever. I've got a video on the way about every Easter egg and reference in the entire season, and it's over 45 minutes long. But what I was impressed with was the show's ability to introduce existing Star Wars elements without making any fan feel left out of the loop. Black Chrysanthemum walks onto the screen, and it's a perfect introduction to someone who had never seen him before, but people who read the Darth Vader and Dr. Aphra comics immediately know who that is, and he looks exactly like he should, and that kind of thing always hypes me up so much. Just like Cobb Vanth's appearance in The Mandalorian Season 2 and again in this series, it's so rewarding as an avid reader of the Star Wars books and comics, but it feels rewarding to me without being smug towards any fan who doesn't have the time or interest to dive into the universe outside of the movies and TV series. Even a more well-known character like Cad Bane from the Clone Wars is treated as if he could be a new character, because to many viewers he will be, but there are still references to his previous history with Boba Fett. At no point were any of these very fan-servicey moments made to feel like a roadblock in the storytelling. Instead, it's more like an invitation to fans. Did you like that Cad Bane guy? Check out the Clone Wars. Black Chrysanthemum? Pick up some comics. I love that way of introducing existing characters or ideas to a larger audience. My main point is, I'm glad someone can watch an episode with Black Chrysanthemum and fully follow the story. They don't need to go to Wikipedia or watch one of our videos to understand who he is, but those references are there if they're wanted. Speaking of fan service, it's time to talk about The Mandalorian, Grogu, Luke Skywalker, Ahsoka Tano, and all that stuff, and here is where my criticism begins. I want to make it clear that I loved both those episodes. I do think they thematically fit with some of the messages of the series. They were great Star Wars stories, but they were not great Boba Fett stories. So is that a problem if they're taking place in a series titled The Book of Boba Fett? I do think that's where a lot of my confusing feelings about this show stem from. Even if the first 4 chapters of the show were up and down in quality, I was never confused by them. The Mandalorian appeared in Chapter 5, and I loved it and had so much fun watching it, but I was surprised. No big deal, I said, it's a 1-chapter interlude in a book, I can accept that. And then the next episode also barely had anything to do with Boba. I still loved everything with Luke and Grogu, it was so cool to see, but now a third of Boba Fett's show is about different characters. The final scenes of Chapter 6 and 7 are about Grogu and his story. And that's weird. It's easy to forgive because it was so enjoyable, but that's why I think this series is weird. I think adding all the Luke stuff into the Book of Boba Fett was a disservice to both sides of that story, because I wanted more Luke stuff. Ahsoka is with him, and she has been for a while? What was their first meeting like? I want to see them talk more, but we only have so much time, we have to get back to Tatooine. And then when I was watching the season finale, Boba is riding the Rancor, and thematically I loved that. But I think it would have been executed better if we had actually seen more between the two of them. The Rancor Keeper tells Boba that riding the beast will take a lot of time and discipline. And then the next time we see it, he's riding it, no problem. Sure, I'll accept that he learned to ride it off-screen, but I think seeing him successfully stomping into town would have been so much more powerful if we had a scene or two of him bonding with the Rancor. Trying and failing and learning, because like I said, to me this series is about the struggle of reinvention, and then the great big symbol of his reinvention wasn't much of a struggle at all. Again, I like everything riding the Rancor represents, but I think the execution could have been better. So would I sacrifice the Mandalorian and Luke episodes for more Boba stuff? I don't know, and that's why this is so confusing, because I love all that stuff, but I don't know that it made sense to see right now. Catching up with Din for an episode could have been enough, and then maybe he heads off to see Grogu to lead into Season 3 of The Mandalorian. Let those scenes breathe a little more, get to see more between Luke and Ahsoka, take more time to tell that story independent of Boba Fett's. Just like Boba learning to ride the Rancor, Grogu's time with Luke and Din's empty nest syndrome feel rushed to me. I think we could have explored that better and in more depth if we had just waited to resolve it in its own series. However, setting my more reactionary feelings aside, I don't think I'm going to care about this in a few years. It's become clear these stories will be interconnecting to tell one overarching story. Kinda like the Clone Wars, we've got a core cast of characters and we're gonna shift focus between them. Ahsoka was the primary character, but hey, here's an episode all about Kit Fisto. Now we're back to Ahsoka, and wait a minute, let's check in with Darth Maul because he's still alive. Okay, back to Ahsoka. Din Djarin is probably our main focus of this era of storytelling, but then we'll jump over to see what Boba Fett's doing, and hey, Din is involved. Ahsoka is going to get her own arc soon, and Din will probably appear in that too. I wonder if all these series will eventually get like an umbrella title, like Tales from the Outer Rim or something like that. At the end of the day, I really enjoyed watching the Book of Boba Fett. I was excited to wake up early every Wednesday and see it. I have had so much fun digging deep into every episode. Certainly some chapters resonated with me more than others, but I never dreaded watching the next one. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as either season of The Mandalorian, but it did remind me of watching the first episodes of The Mandalorian. That show wasn't quite what I thought it would be, and I had to shift my expectations, and even though there were some missteps, it was overall very satisfying and had me psyched for Season 2, and then Season 2 wound up being a big jump in overall quality. I think we will see a similar pattern for the Book of Boba Fett if there is a second season. But those are all my thoughts for this review. Let me know what you thought of the Book of Boba Fett in the comments. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel to see all our Book of Boba Fett coverage, and consider checking out our Patreon page for even more. We released video reactions and audio commentaries for every episode as they came out. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.